Well, as we await the winner of the presidential election, it's clear that Pennsylvania will play a key role in deciding who takes the White House. Joining us now is Drexel University political science professor Bill Rosenberg. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
So the president right now is leading in Pennsylvania, but there are still many votes to be counted. What can we expect as these outstanding votes trickle in?
Well, you've been showing this morning some shots from the convention center where people are working virtually nonstop to try and count all the ballots. You know, we have to recognize that about 160 million votes were cast through various mechanisms on and before the election, but 100 million of them were voted early. And as a result, those have to be counted in a way that has never been really practiced before in terms of the raw number. So it's going to take a little bit of time to make sure that everything is done properly.
You know, we've been hearing the term blue wall. The president won Pennsylvania in the last election. What is this blue wall that we keep on hearing about as they're analyzing these results?
Well, basically the blue wall involves winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Unfortunately for Hillary Clinton, she lost all three. This is a traditional sort of Rust Belt area, and Joe Biden had as a centerpiece to try and win those states back. One of the things, though, that all the voters or all the viewers have to realize is that Joe Biden did not have to win all three of those blue wall states. All he really had to do was win one of the three. As long as he held on to the Hillary Clinton victories in 2016.
The president has already claimed victory in the election. What's your reaction to that with still so much unknown?
Well, it's not surprising that he did this. Many political analysts have been saying this for quite a while, that Donald Trump was going to claim victory on election night and say, let's just not bother with all these other votes. The election is over. And he repeated this on and on and on again. I think what happens is that we have to recognize that all those people that went out and cast their ballots, regardless of how they cast it, if they did it in a fair and legal way, all ballots have to be cast. And if you were watching any of the coverage last night on many of the networks' walls, what you saw is that different states reported their votes differently in terms of the order of early voting or actually at the polls. And you saw some states rise and some states fall based upon the way they were dumped in.
Well, the president was pointing to Pennsylvania as he has a lead right now, but what is this red mirage that people are hearing about?
Well, the idea is that states are going to get counted, particularly as an example, Pennsylvania, where there's still a lot of ballots that have to be added into the system. So while he may have gotten a lot more votes on election night, that melt is going to occur when more and more of these votes are put into the system through early voting. Just as an aside, I can tell you that when I was riding recently in northeastern Pennsylvania, or even down in Bucks County and Montgomery County, I saw all Biden yard signs, all Trump yard signs. There was not one Biden sign to be found, but if you were going over into the near suburbs like in Lower Merion, it was the exact opposite. So we have to let all the votes count, and then we decide what happens.
Look into your crystal ball. When do you see a winner being declared?
I think the overall winner probably won't be declared until later in the week. I think Pennsylvania has said that they're likely to have their votes finished today or tomorrow. If Joe Biden does persevere and wins in Pennsylvania, I think things look pretty good for Joe Biden, but it's still a very close call. And I also think we have to realize that regardless of the outcome of the election, we live in a very divided country. And 2 weeks after the election, we're still going to have these red and blue waves going all over the country, and it's going to continue to plague us, I think, a little bit going forward.
There's been record turnout in this election. What does that say about the importance of this race?
Well, I think the idea is that there was a lot of enthusiasm. A lot of people wanted to participate. And I think, though, we have to recognize that that gave people an opportunity to vote in a pandemic, which they may not have done otherwise. So that was all a very good move. You know, there have been calls in the past to do 24-hour voting or weekend voting as a way to increase the participation. But one of the losses that we suffered was that that community civic sense of going to the polls, seeing your neighbors, and casting your ballot. So that's a negative consequence of what happened. But at the same time, we've enlarged the electorate and had more people participate.
Well, Professor Bill Rosenberg, Drexel University, thanks so much for your insight. We always do appreciate it, sir.
All right, well, let's all hang on and see what happens.
Buckle our seatbelts. Thank you, sir.